The ground floor is where many apparitions are reported. This intrepid investigator is bent on catching one on camera.
Is there anyone with me who would like to show himself? I would like you to come forward and show yourself to me.
We have a shocking development to report. In a tragic turn of events, renowned paranormal investigator Gaurav Tiwari has been found dead under mysterious circumstances.
He lived his life solving puzzles of the unknown, but now his death is shrouded in mystery. Gaurav Tiwari, the CEO and founder of Indian Paranormal Society, was found dead under mysterious circumstances in his bathroom.
This is the story of Gaurav Tiwari, a man who dared to bring paranormal investigation into the spotlight in India. He documented spine-chilling apparitions of ghosts and supernatural events that captivated many. This is the story of the founder of India's first paranormal society, who ultimately became a victim of the very dark forces he sought to uncover. The story kicks off in 2006 inside a small student apartment in Florida, rented by Gaurav Tiwari. Gaurav Tiwari is a promising young Indian student at the Orlando Flight Training Academy. He moved to the US to attend flight school with plans to return to India and become a commercial pilot. Gaurav's parents in India had worked hard their entire lives to give him the education he desired. They were incredibly proud that he had made the journey to the US to attend flight school and pursue his dream of becoming a pilot. Gaurav was enjoying life, making new friends and starting his career. But then strange things began to happen in his apartment. At night, he would wake up to unfamiliar noises that echoed through the place, sounds he couldn't explain, especially since he was the only one living there. Whether he was reading in bed or having breakfast at the table, he often felt as though someone was sitting right beside him. Initially, Gaurav, who had never believed in ghosts, brushed off these sensations. Like anyone would, he tried to ignore them and continued with his daily routine. But as the odd occurrences grew more intense, he could no longer dismiss them. Eventually, he reached out to friends who had lived in the building before him, as well as the person who sold him the apartment. To his surprise, they all shared similar experiences. The previous tenants had also reported feeling the same unsettling presence after just a few months of living there. In most cases, people would have packed their things and left the apartment the very next day. But Gaurav, instead of reacting like everyone else, grew more intrigued by the reasons behind his experiences. He wanted to know, do ghosts and spirits really exist? Do the dead return to communicate with the living? And most importantly, whose spirits were haunting his home? He started to pay close attention to the strange happenings around him. He noticed every time he heard laughter coming from one end of the apartment, every time he felt someone sitting beside him on his bed, and every time a light he had turned off suddenly turned back on. Gaurav became obsessed with finding answers. He dove deep into the internet, exploring countless stories from people who had experienced similar or even more intense encounters they believed were caused by the spirits of the dead. After months of scouring the web and reading about paranormal experiences from around the world, Gaurav made a life-changing decision. He no longer wanted to be a pilot. He knew his parents would be disappointed, as any parents would be, and he felt guilty about the time and money they had invested in his education. But he also realized that he couldn't continue down a path that no longer brought him joy. Gaurav wanted to dedicate his life to understanding a realm of existence he had somehow tapped into. He aimed to become India's first paranormal investigator. To pursue this passion, he enrolled in a paranormal investigation course at the IAAMHS Metaphysics Institute in Florida, where he would become a certified paranormal investigator. Fast forward to 2009, 2 years since Gaurav dropped out of flight school. After 3 years in the US, he completed his certification and decided it was time to come back to New Delhi, fully aware that he was coming to a country where the culture around paranormal science was met with skepticism. Many viewed ghost stories and discussions about them as mere superstition, and the profession of a paranormal investigator was neither well respected nor financially rewarding. After moving to India, Gaurav became a well-known paranormal investigator and shot to stardom. He made regular appearances on various MTV shows. He even featured on MTV Girls Night Out, India's first paranormal reality show. The series was cut short after an unsettling episode filmed in the abandoned village of Kulhara, where one of the girls experienced strange events and was discovered unconscious in a secluded area.
Jesus, 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 I'm not gonna harm you. Please don't harm me. Please, please don't harm me. I'm just dressing up the dolls for you. Mama, Jesus, Jesus.
In that same episode, Gaurav noticed a child's handprint on his car window, and shortly after, his car inexplicably burst into flames on camera, forcing the crew to evacuate Kulhara. By this time, Gaurav had become a well-known figure in India's media circles, landing roles in 2 movies, Tango Charlie and 16th December. Then, he did something truly groundbreaking. He founded the Paranormal Society of India and took on the role of president. Gradually, membership grew as more people interested in paranormal activities from all over India joined the organization. Over the years, Gaurav explored nearly 6,000 of the world's most haunted locations, collaborating with some of the biggest names in paranormal investigation, and appeared on some of the most popular paranormal reality shows of the time. In Australia, Gaurav became a cast member of the popular paranormal reality TV show Haunting Australia. In one episode, Gaurav and his fellow cast members visited a morgue. The plan was for Gaurav to lie down inside one of the storage units with just a flashlight and a thermal imaging camera.
And what you need to do is, this is where your head will be. The same thing as I said to Ray, this is an original block where many corpses would have laid. You understand that, but I know you're focused.
He settled onto the stretcher surrounded by dead bodies, while his crew pushed him inside and left the morgue for a full 24 hours, leaving Gaurav alone to try to communicate with any spirits that might be there. During the night, Gaurav began to hear noises in the room, tapping sounds, as if someone were lightly tapping their fingers on the metal walls of the morgue. He called out to the spirits, asking them to respond or to cause any movement, but despite hours of trying, he was unable to gather any concrete evidence. Despite feeling disappointed by the lack of evidence from his previous investigation, Gaurav refused to give up. He set his sights on his next location, the infamous old Geelong jail in Victoria, Australia. Although only 4 executions ever took place there, the prison recorded 500 confirmed deaths, mostly from inmates killing each other. Legend has it that the jail is haunted by the ghost of a violent prisoner named Percy Ramage, who is said to manifest as a 7-foot shadow in his old cell, even though he died in the early 1900s. Local residents and visitors have reported seeing full-body apparitions, hearing footsteps when they thought they were alone, and feeling whispers close to their ears. Intrigued by these chilling accounts, Gaurav and his crew set out to investigate the Geelong jail, determined to capture evidence of the supernatural. They meticulously filmed every angle of the building, hoping to document something definitive. The crew ventured into the jail cells where many murders had been reported and where paranormal activity was said to be high, including sounds of conversations echoing through the halls. After hours of gathering footage and evidence, it was finally time for the team to review what they had captured.
Looks like a humanoid shape. Well, is there someone standing here?
Zooming in, they discover someone or something is definitely lurking in the darkness.
And I see a full body apparition or a human being standing there, but there was no human being as such.
Yeah, I can.
In this particular photograph, illuminated by a pinkish red light, they spotted a figure in the distance. The crew recalled that this corridor had been completely empty when they entered, as the jail was left unoccupied for their investigation. Yet in the image, there was clearly a dark silhouette of a man standing outside one of the jail cells. Excitement and disbelief coursed through the team as they realized they might have captured something extraordinary. But that wasn't the only thing they captured that day. They also recorded footage from a different corridor, where a figure suddenly appears right in front of the camera lens, its face almost filling the frame, before vanishing just like the prison guard had. It's genuinely terrifying, and the footage from that day is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. After Gaurav returned to India from Australia, several news channels reached out to him and the newly established Paranormal Society of India. They wanted Gaurav and his team to join reporters on investigations of some of India's most haunted locations. Excited by the opportunity, Gaurav and his team agreed to revisit Gulhara for a second time. If you're not familiar with Gulhara's story, it goes like this. About 300 years ago, the village experienced a mysterious disappearance after a curse was placed upon it, declaring that no one would ever be able to set foot on the land again. Since that day, the village has been abandoned and now lies completely empty, with no human settlement. However, people from nearby villages still report hearing the sounds of children playing, women singing, and markets bustling, as they once did 300 years ago. The team decided to visit the abandoned village and make their way to the village graveyard. It was there, using the K2 meter and other audio equipment, that Gaurav heard a voice. He claimed it was someone telling the crew to leave the village and its spirits alone. The voice terrified even an experienced investigator like Gaurav, prompting him to immediately end the shoot and evacuate the location as quickly as possible. This wasn't an isolated incident. Gaurav frequently encountered unsettling experiences as he delved deeper into a world many consider dangerous. Those close to him believed that his constant proximity to the supernatural began to take a significant toll on his life. In fact, when reporters asked him about the impact of his work on his personal health and well-being, Gaurav shared a thought that would later become well known. He remarked that due to his ongoing interactions with spirits and ghosts in his professional life, sometimes negative energies lingered with him, causing issues in his personal life. In December 2015, Gaurav married the love of his life, his longtime girlfriend Arya. From the outside, it seemed like everything was going well for him and his family. Fast forward to July 2016, and Gaurav was living in Dwarka, New Delhi, with his wife and parents. However, despite their new marriage, arguments between the couple quickly became common. Many observed that Gaurav's erratic schedule, filled with late nights and extensive travel, was a source of worry for Arya. Unfortunately, being out late and traveling were intrinsic to Gaurav's job, making it something he couldn't easily change. As time went on, the tension between them escalated. On July 6, 2016, another argument erupted when Gaurav returned home at 2 a.m., having left many hours earlier. Despite the fight, exhaustion took over, and he crawled into bed beside Arya. They both fell sound asleep. The next morning, July 7, 2016, the household slowly began to wake up. Arya was the first to rise, followed by Gaurav's parents, and finally, Gaurav stirred around 9 a.m. After breakfast, he settled in to work on footage from the previous night. At some point between 10 and noon, he stepped away from his desk and headed to the bathroom. Just 5 minutes later, a loud thud shattered the stillness of the house. Something heavy had hit the floor, and the sound echoed through the quiet. Startled, Arya and the others exchanged uneasy glances. There was a faint sound of struggle at the bathroom door, but at first, no one thought much of it. As the minutes ticked by, the silence from inside grew disturbing. No water, no movement. Arya Kashyap's anxiety rose. She knocked on the door once, twice, 3 times. Feeling a surge of dread, she peered through the small window, and what she saw froze her in terror. She screamed. A neighbor rushed over, bursting through the door. There, sprawled on the cold bathroom floor, lay Gaurav Tiwari, the nation's most famous ghost hunter, drenched in sweat and gasping for air. Amid the chaos, no one noticed the faint, dark mark around his neck. They rushed him to the hospital, but time had slipped away. An hour and a half later, as doctors struggled to save him, Gaurav took his last breath, leaving behind loved ones stunned, haunted by the mystery of what happened behind that door. He told his wife a month ago that a negative force was pulling him towards it. He said he was trying to control it but seemed unable to do so. My daughter-in-law ignored it, thinking he was just depressed due to work overload, and did not tell us about it. Fast forward to the police investigation into Gaurav's mysterious death. The official cause was ruled as asphyxiation, or death by strangulation. But Gaurav's family refused to accept this conclusion. They found it deeply unsettling that, just minutes before his supposed suicide, Gaurav had been on his computer, chatting with a magazine editor about an upcoming cover feature. He was actively exchanging emails then. Right in the middle of composing one, he supposedly walked over to the bathroom and ended his life. It just didn't add up. When the family rejected the police verdict, investigators agreed to take a closer look and called Arya in for questioning. During her interview, Arya revealed that, for the past month, Gaurav had been saying he felt troubled by negative energies. She explained that ever since he mentioned it, he'd started acting strangely. He was quieter, more withdrawn, often seeming lost and unhappy. Honestly not sure what to think or who to believe. On one hand, he was excited about being on the cover of a magazine. Typically, that's not how someone on the verge of taking their own life behaves. People in that mindset usually aren't looking forward to future achievements. It's a completely different dynamic. But at the same time, those negative energies mentioned, whether they're supernatural or not, add another layer to all of this. Maybe the long hours and the unusual nature of his work had worn him down, possibly even leading to depression. But over time, Gaurav kept insisting it was the negative energies that were disturbing him. He had even expressed these same feelings to other members of the Paranormal Society. At first, the police were reluctant to entertain such a story, doing their best to avoid explaining his death through supernatural means. But the family pointed out some real concerns, like how his body was found and the complete lack of motive for suicide. These were questions the police couldn't easily answer, and lacking a clear explanation, they explored a range of theories, some of them seeming almost random. The official ruling was suicide, but many questioned whether he could have even done that to himself. That's a huge flaw, leading to the big question, who or what could have been responsible? Was it possible that Gaurav had been murdered? Almost certainly not. The bathroom door was locked from the inside, so nobody could have entered, killed him, and left. It was impossible to lock that door from the outside. Plus, his family would have noticed someone coming up the stairs and into the bathroom. They would have seen or at least heard something. So the idea of murder seems almost impossible. At this point, the case doesn't make much sense. If he didn't kill himself and he wasn't murdered, then what really caused his death? Gaurav was a successful professional with a strong reputation in his field. He had a devoted wife, Arya, who'd been his longtime girlfriend, and his team relied heavily on his sharp mind and scientific expertise. As an ordained minister of the Metaphysical Church of Humanistic Science, his analytical skills were exceptional, especially in scientific and technical areas. Despite these qualities, the police insisted it was a clear case of suicide, stating that he had hanged himself in the bathroom. During their investigation, police noted that while Gaurav's projects held value, his family had encouraged him to take a more traditional job. The demands of paranormal work, the stress, odd hours, and late-night investigations were a constant concern. This pressure reportedly led to frequent disagreements with his family, who hoped he'd find greater stability in a conventional career. What's especially interesting is the number of people who believe the supernatural may have played a role in Gorov's death. Shortly after he passed away, a blogger for the Daily O named Deepta Roy wrote an article suggesting that spirits from Bangor, one of the haunted locations Gorov had visited, might have had something to do with it. She described how each time she'd visited Bangor, she'd sensed energies she couldn't explain, and how every time she left, she felt as though she'd carried some negative energy back with her. This has led to a popular theory that Gorov was killed by an evil spirit. Some believe that a spirit may have attached itself to him while he was cleansing one of the properties, tormenting him until, eventually, it led to his death. It sounds crazy, right? Maybe it is, but there's actually some evidence to support this idea. In the months before his death, Gorov confided in his family that he felt a strange dark presence around him, as if something paranormal was following and watching him. He also talked about how ghosts could leave black markings on the bodies of those they haunt, markings eerily similar to the one found on Gorov's neck after he died. He claimed these injuries could be caused by vengeful spirits, suggesting that perhaps he encountered one that ultimately killed him. Adding to the mystery, Gorov's father reported seeing a dark apparition in their house several times leading up to his son's death. This entity seemed to ignore him, instead sticking close to Gorov, hovering just a few feet behind him, as if it were watching him. Could it be that Gorov picked up some kind of evil spirit or demon during one of his cleansings? Whether it actually killed him is open to interpretation, but the events leading up to his death certainly make for an intriguing theory. In the aftermath of Gorov's mysterious death, the police closed the case, labeling it a suicide. Yet they failed to provide a clear explanation for what led to that decision. The lack of a motive and the unusual circumstances surrounding this so-called suicide have prompted many to speculate that Gorov may not have taken his own life after all. While the case may be officially closed in the police files, it remains open for us, for you, and for the paranormal community to ponder. We may have to learn to live with this tragic mystery forever.